This section gives a brief introduction to view models. View models belong to the MVVM pattern, which is used all around uFrame. The entire idea of MVVM is to separate logic from the view and from data. For this, we need some sort of an object which will serve like a glue. This is exactly what viewModel does. Intuitively, viewModel is just a data container which can report events about the data modifications to any interested part of your system, like controllers and views. Anytime you change your data, viewModel produces an event, so that view can react accordingly. And anytime you invoke a command, controller can catch this event and handle it. Original MVVM pattern doesn't use controllers. However, uFrame does. We use controllers to delegate any logic from the view model to the controller when the command is invoked. When you define an element, you can add properties, collections, and commands. They all form your view model. Properties are represented as P class, which can store a value of a certain type and reports changes whenever you change this value. Collections are represented as model collection class. It stores items of a certain type and reports changes whenever you add or remove an item. Commands are just objects that can trigger an event. Whenever your view model is linked to the controller and you trigger a command, controller will handle it and invoke any related logic. Whatever you define in your diagram, it is going to be generated inside special designer file, and you're not going to look at this code anymore. However, you can add your own variables, events, and methods, and so on to the viewModel partial class. In my case, it's my element viewModel. There are several ways to instantiate a view model. We will talk about the most basic ones. The most reasonable and correct way to get an instance of a view model is to use its controller. Let's go to main element controller now. Main element has a link to my element. That is why inside main element controller, I have a link to my element controller. And it's called my element. Each controller has a special method, and the naming convention is create and your element name. In my case, it's create my element. If you use this method, newly created instance will be linked to this my element controller. It is going to be passed through its initialize method here, where you can define any additional logic related to initializing your view model. And all the commands will be initialized too and handled properly. Alternatively, you can use public empty constructor. You can create your view model just like you create any regular class. But in this case, instance will not be linked to any controller and commands will not be initialized, so you should be careful about this method.